family. My BFF and partner in life, Susan, who I get to stay home with. And her son, Dan, and wife, Pam Simonetti. Daughter, Sharon, and her husband, Bob, Daniel. And sitting in the corner on my side of the family, Matthew and his wife, Jessica. So I wanted to warn Matthew that the fact that I'm retiring doesn't make the question get any easier. He's been struggling for years to define what it is that his dad does for a living. And I think there's a lot of people in this room who think the same thing, but years ago, I think when Canyon was almost finished, Matthew came over and we went to lunch, and I took him around the power plant and I said, well, okay, so here's an example of what your dad does. I build and operate power plants. And he says, oh, you're like Mr. Burns in The Simpsons. And anyway, I said, well, what do you tell people when they ask you what your dad did? He said, well, we kind of gave up trying to explain it, so we just told everybody you work for the CIA. Which is kind of a nice relief, because with a name like Shortino, I was thinking, well, we could say he's in the family business, but I'm not quite sure there's a difference there. Okay, so you're going to have to put up with a few jokes here. I had a rude awakening in terms of trying to put my retirement into perspective. When I first got out of grad school, I worked for the Missouri Public Service Commission, and one of the first projects that we were looking at was looking at an economic evaluation of the 2 nuclear plants that were being built out there at the time, Wolf Creek and Callaway. And we were there before it even got built. So we did the analysis and projects got approved. And quite recently, I was kind of made aware of something I didn't even think about, and that was, as we're working on the SONGS decommissioning efforts, we're looking at dry cast storage to put the spent fuel rods, and it's a question of vertical versus horizontal dry cast storage units, blah, blah, blah. It's all technical. Anyway, the project manager for Edison was out in the Midwest, and we had a conference call every Thursday, and so he says, well, I'm out here looking at vertical dry cast storage. This is a Callaway. And I said, Callaway, you're telling me they're decommissioning that power plant? He said, yeah. So it just occurred to me that my work career has outlasted the operating life of a nuclear power plant. So I thought, okay, well, I better quit before they put me in a vertical dry cast storage. So anyway, after Missouri, I got here and I worked for the gas company for a while. And that was a lovely commute from Upland to downtown LA. And then I shortened my commute a little bit by going to Edison, and then I finally built the Metrolink, which made it a little bit easier to commute. And then I spent 2 years at Riverside, and if Reiko was here, I'd tell her my apologies, but doing time in Riverside was kind of going to go on my rap resume when I start going into rap music. Anyway, it sounded better in my head. But yeah, when I was at Riverside, I did actually meet 2 good friends, Steve Johnson, who's now with Shell. He's the one who introduced me to the game of golf. And I was going to tell that story about how when we were working in Riverside, Bill was still our GM, and Bill used the word inconceivable, obviously. So, no, Bill said something that was really, Steve was the one that said, well, that's inconceivable. And I looked at Steve and I said, you keep using that word. I don't think it means what you think it means. Well, he didn't react like you guys do. So 6 months later, I run into him at work and he said, you know, I was mad at you. I said, what for? He said, well, I looked that word up and I thought I was using it in the right context. And then he said, then I saw The Princess Bride that weekend, and I finally figured it out. I said, you were mad at me for 6 months, and you thought I was... Anyway, that's a pretty good story. But the other thing that I wanted to mention about Riverside was I met my long-lost twin brother, Gary Knoll. Now, some of you have heard the story, but when I started working for the city of Anaheim, both of us were testifying at the FERC. We were putting our transmission into the ISO. We had to get through their process. Anyway, Gary was on the witness stand for about a day and a half, and then it was my turn. So I'm being cross-examined by the PUC attorney, and she had a really difficult time understanding how we brought our energy from the Hoover Dam into the city. And she actually asked me 4 different times during the course. And then the 5th time she asked me, I tried not to roll my eyes, and I started to say, well, Ms. Pastamani, I don't mean to confuse you, but before I could finish my sentence, she says, oh, you're not confusing me, Mr. North. Yeah, so it was crazy stuff. So wherever you are, Gary, Mom wants to know why you haven't called. But, this last 14 years with the city has been great. It's been very challenging. We've had a lot of complicated stuff hit the industry these last 14 years. When I was at Edison, we didn't really see a lot of those changes, but we really had a good team of folks. And any success that I had, I kind of attributed to two elements. One was having senior management, having the trust and the confidence that we could do our jobs well. And one of the things I have to thank Marcy for, I always have to thank her for this, when she first took on the GM spot, she empowered all of us to run our own divisions, and she was just going to steer the ship, but we were responsible for our own decision-making process. So all the stuff that I ever did, I always had her backing. She always had my back. She did a very good job of clearing the decks with the PUB and the councils at the time. So that, I thank you for. That was a gift. The other part of it was having the staffs that I've been really pleased, as you can see, everybody's here, and it's been a real honor to be able to work with a lot of you. And I could really sit here and point everybody out and talk about what a great job you did working with me, and I could, and we could probably do that when I'm done. But in the interest of time, there's a couple of people I did want to single out. I always talk about how Larry Davis helped me with the building of the power plant. The other unsung hero was Suzanne Wilson. She was the one that actually got us the licensing process. That was actually a longer process than it was just to build the plant. Suzanne didn't know anything about CEC licensing, but she took it on, and for that, we got it done. And wherever you are, Suzanne, it was a great job. I always appreciate that. And of course, Gary Rose is here. Gary was the engineer that helped us build the plant, so 2 of my favorite people are here. And then the other person I really wanted to mention was Mark Lopez. You heard all about the CIS program and the work that he did to get that done. Now, I know Mark's pretty much a humble guy. He's going to be the first to admit he would have never got that done without the assistance of the folks around him. And that's true, because I saw the 1st floor and the 9th floor and the effort that they put to get this thing done. Pretty complicated, very detailed. The 1st floor, I got to say, you guys were way beyond the call of duty, because in most cases they probably hadn't worked on a project of that scope, and to give up their own personal time, and they're working overtime and stuff. It's great. I appreciate that. But the scary thing about Mark, I have to warn you, you're going to lose him, because when TV Westerns ever make their comeback, I've seen Mark on his horse with his cowboy uniform. Hollywood is going to scarf him up in a second. So you got that to worry about. And then, of course, all of this, these events, all the events that are ever planned, don't take place unless we have Melissa Siphon and the communications group putting it together. I mean, all the events that the utility's ever done since I've been here, she's been behind it all. And for the effort that you put today, I thank you. And then her team with Mark and Justin. But a special salute to the person who was my personal assistant for 10 years, and she's behind everything we ever do. Carol, wherever you are. Carol. Wherever you are, Sarge. No more midnight requisitions. I got my discharge papers. I'm out of this kid now. And of course, I can't get by without a nod to my fellow wizards on the 11th floor. Dooku. And I'm glad Ed was here. Brian, Janet, and of course Don. all of you guys have been great friends of mine. And then the crazy element of the first, Peggy, Miss Peggy,
Yeah.
and Miss Lodelin from Southern Philippines. Now, I've got to tell you something. I grew up in the foothill mountains of Blue Ridge, and nobody ever told me that they made moonshine in the Philippines. But I'm here to tell you. It's funny what you find out about people. I mean, who would have ever thought? Who would have ever thought David Chen had a sense of humor? I'll tell you one story. When Marcy was across the street and we were rotating the GM spot. Don had just taken off on vacation. It was my turn to be in charge. I get a change order for a water capital project asking the GM to approve an additional 10% funding. So I go down and I meet David in his office and I said, David, did you deliberately wait for Don to take off and wait for me to sign off on the stop you? And he just looked at me and said, yeah. And Don, I'm sorry, but you can't resist that boyish charm that David has. But anyway, it's all been good. I mean, I think the best part about this job is just this kind of element. I mean, I've come to know most of you very well, some of you not as well, but I'm sincere when I say I think that I've never been as blessed as I am today. You know, Mark and I sometimes talk about, you know, what it means to be rich in this world. And as I look at all of you, I think I'm pretty wealthy. I've got some really good friends, I've made really good friends, and I just really feel blessed. So with that, I want to personally thank each and every one of you for being here, for helping me feel blessed. Your friendship means a lot to me, and the memories are going to be cool to take home with. I mean, this is just too much, but just the personal interaction that I had with everybody. It's been a pleasure to work with you. I'm not going to forget about my experiences here. I just enjoyed, and I want to thank you all for allowing me to take a small part of your life and enjoy it with you, because the reality is we do work hard, we have lots of challenges, but this is a family. This small little city of Anaheim. I work for large corporations, but this has been probably the highlight of my career, to have been with all of you and have shared with it. So with that, may God bless you all. Enjoy the blessings of this holiday, and thank you for everything.